Welcome back, everyone. In partnership with UNFPA, I moderated a panel on the issue of gender-based violence and specifically how it's affecting women and girls in Sierra Leone. We brought you part one yesterday. Here now is the second part of that conversation.
Thank you. I want to go to Asma James quickly, though, before I open it up to take some comments and questions from those watching, those in attendance. Asma James, what's the role of media in moving the needle forward here and bringing meaningful change to this issue?
In all of this, we need education. But as media people, you don't have lots and lots of media people interested in reporting some of these issues because we have the social media. Everyone runs to the social media. I can take Khadija's case, for example. Everybody writes on social media, but no one is going to the police to ask how far we've gone with this matter. No one is going to the law officers department, the DPP's office to ask how far we've gone. When is this case going to be charged? This is because it's so complicated. So we need to get more media institutions interested in giving airtime to some of these issues or to these issues because it's very complicated, like I said, to report or to deal with sexual SGBV issues. And also the mental struggle we go through. As for me, for the last 2 weeks, I've been so stressed in looking after all these issues or talking about all these issues. And so as media people, like I said, I am part of the SLAJ, Sierra Leone Association of Journalists. This is what I tell even editors that, listen, you need to dedicate some portion of your reporting to SGBV issues because we don't need people to go to the social media to get news, especially most of these news as if someone sits in his office, in his house, in his bathroom, just post something. But then we need to give them factual news reporting on SGBV issues. So as a campaigner, as a journalist, this is what I've been doing. This is what I continue to do, to provide, to give airtime, give opportunities to victims, to survivors, to the courts. I think we are one of the few media houses that report issues on SGBV from the courts. Most of the court issues, most of the issues on SGBV you hear on Radio Democracy. This is because I am also passionate and also give time for these issues to be aired on Radio Democracy. And many a time, my Lady Justice will call to correct some of the terms used again by these journalists in the courtroom. So, like I said, it's complicated to report on SGBVs. But as media practitioner, I will continue to give, my younger ones more information, encourage them to report because we need to give airtime to these issues. Like 2 people are convicted yesterday. No one knew about that. This morning, I had it on my radio. Today, again, my reporter told me there's another conviction. So we need to be reporting some of these issues, and I'll continue to do that.
Asma, thank you.
Can I just say something here as well? In as much as Chona says that, the government has to invest in this, there's something about Sierra Leoneans. There's this thing, everything has to do with the government. The government should do this. People do not want to take personal responsibility. I still maintain that parents have a role and they have responsibilities in knowing how to bring up their children. Yes, I know that there's poverty around, yes, but I still think that maybe some form of public education whereby parents are taught parenting skills. Moral education, not just for the schools, but it should start from the home. Moral education that says you should know what is wrong from what is right. Children should know that no, their bodies should not be touched. So and so shouldn't happen. They should know these things. What has happened to all of that?
Let me bring in Chona.
That's discipline.
We're pushed for time, so I do want to give Chona the chance to respond. Chona, not apparently, Sierra Leoneans, in the view of Lady Justice, a little too over-reliant on the government.
I mean, it's very difficult to respond directly to that with due respect to the Honorable Lady Justice. I look at the evidence. Especially on this issue. I want to focus on the question of the responsibility of parents. I'm afraid the notion, again, I want to draw the attention of Lady Justice to the fact that in this country, parents are children. 50% of the girls in this country, in some districts, have their first babies when they are children. You're ignoring the context of what happens here. There's an endemic poverty. There's an endemic, again, absence of the states in regulating this issue. They born from the things I just talked about. The state stands by and lets our children are married early. Too many of them have children. In fact, until this year, when they got pregnant in school, we banned them from school. That's the state of Sierra Leone for you. We didn't do enough to encourage female teachers in school, which I've said will make a big difference. That's the state. When you talk about educating parents, what you only need to do is educate your children. The state has not done that. Sierra Leone as a country is an abysmal failure when it comes to educating its children. The way you educate parents is not to start some program at the end of the day for parents to tell them, no parent hates their children. I do not believe that. I've worked in this sector and I look at these numbers carefully over time. No parents even gives their children into marriage because they hate them. And that's sometimes it comes from this, again, a very privileged position of looking down at the rest of society. Now we don't know, this why a person will go to get in picking. So no parents send their kids out to go sell at night because they hate them. I was sent out to sell at night because my mom needed to survive, because my sisters needed to survive. But we have a society that means if you're a woman who has children, by the way, 75% of our women in this country will become primary caregivers of their family at some point in their lifetimes. 75%. This is an analysis that was done by Population Council. Do you know what that means? It means women carry disproportionate burden of responsibility for their families, and yet they have the least access to the resources in the states, least access to everything in terms of opportunities. And I just spelled out a number of these issues. To systematically address these things, it's not about starting at the end of it to say, oh, parents, let's organize it. What we do is make sure, our children do not get pregnant, the work that UNFPA does, provide reproductive health to kids. B, make sure they stay in school and they all graduate. If you are educated in school, the right kind of education, and you do not get pregnant when you're not ready for pregnancies, you're not forced into early marriage and FGM and all of these issues, and every single one of these things are continuing at the rates they do because of a failure of the state. So it's not to discount that parents do not have a role, but let's don't blame the victims. Majority of children in this country, we forget that. They are born by children who are themselves victimized, who are themselves victims of state systemic failure. And that's important.
Thank you, Charanor. Let me open it up to questions that we have coming in. Mr. Vanley, this one is for you. The question is from a Girl at a Time webinar. She says, the majority of victims of rape are children. What is the ministry doing to educate young girls in schools?
We are saying this is a healthy conversation. When everything is the state, the state is a composition of all of us that are speaking about the state. We are a government that look at, how do they call it? We work at interministerial level. So even like Purposeful mentioned about the girls that were deprived when they get pregnant, not attending school, we worked on it together to ensure that radical inclusion is being brought. So what we are going to do, education also has a whole gender department. We are going to work together with them. As I speak, the Assistant Director of Gender in the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education is waiting for me for a meeting. So these are all areas we collaborate. We will ensure that the education reach to school. We work together with the Ministry of Education to have guidelines for teachers who may be doing certain things that are unprofessional. We work together with them. We are also working with them again in ensuring that we send messages even when they are doing their virtual teaching learning programs. And I can assure you that we have worked also with the non-formal division of education to send gender-based violence messages whilst they are waiting, so that we don't have an incident of teenage pregnancy during Corona like it happened in Ebola. So we are always looking at lessons learned and moving forward to strategize alongside, but collective responsibility is what we are working on as a ministry. country.
I want to bring in this question from Galaga King, and thank you for answering that question, Mr. Vandy. This is to the panel, and I'm happy to Agatha, I'm going to put this to you and then open it up to everybody else. Galaga King asks this question. There are two elephants in the room, domestic violence and FGM, which Cherno touched upon. But there are two elephants in the room, domestic violence and FGM. What do the panel consider needs to be done to meaningfully address these two issues? Agatha, what are your thoughts on addressing FGM and domestic violence?
Well, I will not deviate to what others have mentioned. I think we have to, first of all, sensitize the people. We have to give the right content-specific messages. And as we give these messages, alongside we work on our laws, work on our policies, because I know FGM is a big elephant, as we all know, and nobody wants to talk about it, especially this government. They don't want to talk about it.
Why is that? Why?
Well, I think because we have a system or we have a cultural practice wherein, personally, I think the politicians use the FGM system as a way of maintaining their position, as a way of maintaining their vote. They are afraid to touch that part of our culture, because if they touch that part, they are definitely going to lose a certain bulk of their vote. Remember, all of these women in that particular sector do vote and rally around them when it comes to their elections. So they are afraid, they don't want to touch that part of their vote. But as I say,
pause there. Let's face the elephant in the room. There's no reason not to. There's the beauty of the virtual gathering. Mr. Vandy, address that. You have talked about a great deal today. You've talked about one-stop centers. You've talked about making progress and hope, and you have a lot of hope about a lot of things, and I applaud that. I'm hoping it rubs off on me. Let's talk about FGM. You have not talked about FGM and where that fits into the government policy strategy of reducing violence, or eliminating, rather, that's what we want, eliminating violence against women and girls, because it is a human rights violation. Why isn't the government tackling FGM publicly, boldly, loudly?
Thank you very much for bringing this big elephant to the discussions. FGM in Sierra Leone is culturally entrenched, and like I think Cherno gave a statistics, it's over 80% of the population practice it. And I can tell you, each government, that are successive governments, have tried their own parts. For instance, when the Maputo Protocol was adopted, late and former President Kaba brought the instrument to Sierra Leone, and part of cabinet memorandum that came out of that discussion was, can you allow the civil societies who are very close to their people to start engagement, sensitization, public education, and whatever you may wish to call them, for them to engage? Because government do not want to make a policy today or a legislation today that is not followed. We have seen countries in Africa that have developed legislations and they are still doing backyard. So we want to have a sustainable approach in ending FGM in Sierra Leone. And I can tell you,
to be clear, I just want to make sure that I'm not misunderstanding you. Just help me, and then I'm going to open it up for those on the ground working on this issue. Are you saying to me that the government is saying that they don't want a top-down approach to this? They want it to be grassroots-led?
It has to be grassroots. It has to be grassroots. If you want it to be sustainable, it has to be grassroots.
Does that not just mean you're passing the buck? Because at the end of the day, you're not taking that approach to rape. So why are you taking that approach to FGM?
No, FGM and rape, there are distinctions between the two, much as there may be linkages that you may want to draw between the two. But what we are saying,
woman's body and for bodily integrity, essentially for men's purpose. But carry on. Mm-hmm.
Yes. When you look at rape, we need to ensure that some of these things that are now happening, I mean, it's a state emergency as was declared last year. But then when we look at the FGM issue, even the rape issue, you need to get to community, which is why the male involvement. And Dr. Olabisi mentioned, now you have young perpetrators. So you also need to ensure that you engage communities, you engage societies, you engage families. In my introduction, I mentioned about the parental strategy that is also coming into play. Because if you don't engage the parents, how they even look at gender relations among the boys and the girls growing up, I think we are missing out a lot. I mean, it's not just about looking at what the state has done or what the state has not done, but let us also look at the bringing up of these children is also very important, so that the culturalization of how they behave to each other, Aisha, it becomes pertinent to their very livelihood and survival.
Understood, but we're going off topic because I'm asking about FGM. So I'm going to bring in Cherno on the ground, who has also done a lot of work in the space. So Cherno, I know you've spoken a great deal about the issue of FGM, and I'm gonna toss this grenade over to you.
Toss the grenade. It is a grenade. I know, and thank you so much for bringing it up. And I really appreciate the candor with which, again, you are leading this and to UNFP for really. And I know this is an issue that UNFP as well cares about. Frankly, again, I know that Mr. Vandy is doing his best. I wish the Honorable Minister herself were here, because what Mr. Vandy just said is that we want a bottom-up approach and that they're waiting for some things to happen for them also. All I'll ask the government is for them to show me a strategy, one strategy. They don't have any. This is not on their priority list. It's not written anywhere. They have not done, there was a strategy developed back in the days. It was killed in the last regime. This government has been in power now for 2.5 years. We know everything they talk about, what they consider priorities. They have not included this systematic issue that is so deeply entrenched. It is cultural. It does require a boldness on the part of the state. It does require a deep commitment. Show us what you're doing. Show us a plan. Put some resources on engaging with us. Community conversations on also criminalizing, which is something I think we all agree on, the forceful initiation of too many young girls. It happens every day. Every time you step outside of Freetown, including in the city, you hear too many young girls are forcefully initiated. Even the people who defend this practice, even these people who defend it as well, it's their choice, agree with us that the forceful initiation of young girls ought to be banned. Why is the government on that? We don't see them. And I think, again, this is what I know I'm a broken record when I talk about state failure. And I'm not referring to just one government. I'm referring to systemic governments after government. The fact of the matter is, in this country, we treat women's issues, we treat girls' issues as an afterthought. My friend Agatha just spoke so eloquently about it. They toss it as a political football. Women's lives, girls' lives, is based on how does it look politically. And that's just sad.
Cherno, thank you for that. Mr. Vandy, do you want the grenade back? Just checking. No? Okay, I didn't think so.
You can send that to me again. I just want to tell Cherno that yes, this current government has mentioned there was a strategy, there was a draft strategy for the reduction of female genital cutting in Sierra Leone. And then I can also tell you that the medium-term development plan, Cherno, you can go to cluster 5 and you can find something on FGM, just to allay your fears that this government is silent, is not doing anything. But it's a plan, it's a 5-year plan. Let's wait. When the government says they will do something and it's not done, you can also come again to knock on our doors. Cherno is in the cluster 5.
My brother, as you know, I've read that plan very well. I know it's cover to cover. But the reference to FGM in a plan is very different from a strategy. It's a big 5-year plan. It's not a strategy. It's not in your own strategy right now as a ministry. But again, I know you do your best, Mr. Vandy. I really wish the minister were here. So I don't want to push this too much. I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Agatha, does anyone else want to weigh in on this issue? Because Fatmata pulled a face where she was listening, and I was wondering if she wanted to weigh in.
So I need to go back to as far back as the Child Rights Act of 2007. That's the act that actually laid the foundation for us to be having a conversation that we have now on FGM. Because prior to that act passing in 2009, it was a taboo to have a conversation on that subject matter. And one of the things I've suggested in the past is that we need to reach out to the people who practice this culture and try to understand the value it brings to them. And until and unless we have a national conference to speak to these issues, to engage these women, to see what values are being attached to that, we're always going to have a peripheral conversation and never nip it in the bud. Why do I say this? All our different cultures and traditions and sects in different areas of the country have their own different perspectives and values to this tradition. Some consider it as a rite of passage. Some consider it as just a hand-me-down process. But we cannot just sit and make a position or a policy or a statement or a law without getting to the people. And I always say the law is supposed to be the will of the people. Otherwise, we're going to have violations. Don't forget, for instance, we have a law that says there's no right to abortion. You cannot engage in any form of abortion. It's criminal, and you're going to go to jail if you do abortion. Of course, we're aware it's practice that abortion is being carried out. Whether it's medical or non-medical, it's still being carried out. But we've never seen any convictions on abortion. And that's another area we're pushing for advocacy. So the challenges are there. The uniqueness of some of this practice are also there. Yes, it's entrenched in our culture, but we also have to engage. And don't forget, when our government goes out and signs these treaties, they sometimes don't actually sit and think about the treaties that they're signing. They sign, they come home, and then they start finding it difficult to domesticate. Which is why even the Child Rights Act is not fully in compliance with the CRC treaty, which is why the Maputo Protocol has not been fully domesticated. So we have all of these constraints. My problem is you're aware of our culture and our traditions. When you go out to sign these treaties, you're not having a gun onto your head to sign them. It is up to you to take your time to read and understand the document before you sign them. But when you sign them, you're going to expect people to clamor for you to domesticate and push for the change that the people want, because you are the first person who was asking for a change for you to have gone ahead to sign them. But before I wrap up on that FGM, I think we haven't spoken about the disabled people. We have a high number of disabled people who have been subjected to rape and sexual violence and domestic violence in Sierra Leone. And their limitations and their constraints are very high, because most of the time, other people don't understand what they're saying. Their case dies because of their limitation in communication. We haven't spoken about child trafficking. Most of those kids that you see selling in the streets have been taken from the villages. They say they're coming to put them to school, they're going to educate them, and they end up putting 5,000 leones or less than $1 worth of items on their head, and they stay in the streets all night. We haven't spoken about access to services, and not all just for rape only, but just those basic services like water. When you have water coming into the streets tap at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you get your kids up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go and fetch water that will serve you for a week, you are exposing them to violence and danger. Most of the rape cases happen in the nick of the night, and these victims cannot identify the perpetrators. And we do not have the magic to help them identify the perpetrators. We're coming back now to the conversation of the forensic lab. The social media engagement, we have to move with the times. We will not be able to stop social media engagement. We're not going to be able to stop the access to all these platforms that have been created. So what do we do? How do we engage? How do we sensitize? So it's like there's attitudinal issues, there's lack of will to implement our laws, there's the issue of discrimination in implementing our laws, there is lack of resources to the structures that need to implement our laws. There is unavailability of services to the people, the women and girls. And of course, if there's lack of access, it means you're pushing your kids or the burden on the kids. And don't forget, even those kids who are selling in the street, the Child Rights Act prevents these things from happening. It says you cannot do that. You cannot subject these children. So where are the structures to implement the law? And then where are the structures to house these children so that they're removed from these homes where they're subjected to all this violence? So these are all the topical issues, and they're also intertwined. You cannot speak about SGBV without speaking about FGM. And you cannot speak about FGM without understanding the subject matter of FGM. So we have a lot of homework to do. And unless and until we go back to our communities and start engaging and conversing and trying to understand some of these issues, we will not be able to stop the culture of rape. Because for some people, they're not raping because they just have to. They have reasons. There's pedophilia. There's the fact that child marriage, you rape a child and they say, okay, you're going to marry her. Can you imagine you rape somebody and they force you into marriage for that child? And you hear somebody saying, okay, you're a full-grown woman now, you have breasts popping out, it's time for you to go into marriage. Oh, I don't have money, I cannot feed you anymore. The most rich man in the town wants to marry you. Go ahead and help the family. It's always a burden on the women, as Cherna had said. The burden on the women is very high. And then you have a situation where when the structures are set up, you have the men making decisions. Look at the number of men we have in parliament. It speaks volumes. We need an affirmative action bill. We're still waiting on that. Until we have positive discrimination to benefit the women of Sierra Leone, we would not get to where we want to be.
Fatma, thank you. Kim, Dr. Dixon.
Yeah, I do want to come in because, as much as we're talking about Sierra Leone, this is a global issue. And I do have, we do have some people waiting on the line, like Amanda Nguyen has made a difference in the US. So I wanted to hear from her. And I also have UNFPA, our Chief of Gender, just to give us some aspects about what can we do? What have others done that can make a difference? Thank you.
Amanda Nguyen, to you, if you're, I'm hoping your mic is open and you can pop up. Can you share your thoughts on what you've heard?
My name is Amanda. I'm an activist in the United States. My parents are Vietnamese boat refugees, but I'm an American citizen. I am most known for the worst day of my life, being raped. And I remember walking out of the hospital where I had a rape kit procedure and feeling so incredibly alone. And the thing that still holds true for me, and I've heard it, in this conversation today, is the worst thing that happened to me wasn't being raped. It was being betrayed by a criminal justice system. I thought that the government would be there to uphold my human rights and dignity. That's what they tell us to do as rape survivors: go to the police, go to the hospital. And in my case, I found out that civil rights were not granted equally to survivors in the United States. So long story short, I sent out an email to everyone I knew, and I shared my story, and people wrote back saying that this also happened to them. In my case, my rape kit was going to be destroyed untested before the statute of limitations. That significant rights were afforded to the accused, and the criminal justice system is incredibly stacked against survivors of sexual assault. And critically, I realized that there is, yes, this incredible re-traumatization and stigma that is placed, the burden is placed on survivors like us, but that there are so many survivors. I remember, I cared about this issue before, but I remember walking into my local area rape crisis center, and there weren't enough seats for us in that waiting room. And it was just this light bulb where I realized my story is not my own. We eventually were able to pass the Sexual Assault Survivor Bill of Rights unanimously through the United States Congress. But the story didn't end there. We heard from over 1 million people around the world, survivors who are begging to have their human rights and dignity recognized. And so the thing that I want to, what I've taken away today from this incredible panel is the importance of having dialogue, the importance of hearing survivor stories. Just like so many people have reiterated today, the people who have the solutions to the answers of these very complex issues are the people who live that problem every day. And so, being intersectional, not only about professionals, but carrying that in our everyday life is so incredibly important to the fathers, but also just to everyone to play their part in looking at this issue from an intersectional lens, and most importantly, listening to the needs of survivors and amplifying and giving them a platform. Yeah, I'm so sorry my camera's not working right now, but I just want to reiterate thank you so much for having this dialogue. And I hope it is going to be one of many, you know, and that at least for my team and I at RISE organization we founded to pass these rights. We passed a total of 31 bills so far for over 80 million people. That there is hope. It is difficult, but the work that we do is focused on, while it's focused on access to justice, it is meant to be intersectional, and just like others have said on this call, to focus the emphasis on bringing survivors' voices to the table, to the drafting table, where their own rights are being deliberated on. Thank you for having me.
Amanda, thank you. Thank you for sharing and for telling your story and the work that you're doing here in the United States and the ripple effect throughout the world. So thank you for that. I want to turn to Nafissatou J. Diop, Chief Gender and Human Rights Branch, Technical Division of UNFPA. Nafissatou, over to you. Would be grateful for your contribution. What stood out for you from this conversation?
Thank you so much, and I'm sorry I'm not seeing anywhere to activate the camera also, but I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
And okay, great. Thank you, Isa. Actually, you know, that was a very rich debate and very important and courageous, and I would like to thank everybody who contributed, and particularly my colleagues from UNFPA and Dr. Kim. So I'm in New York here, sitting and still under lockdown, but trying to do my part, even sitting in my living room, you know. But with this virtual and fantastic tools, we are able to do quite a lot. And I would like to first start by saying that during the past 11 years, I was the global coordinator of the UNFPA UNICEF Joint Program to end female genital mutilation. So this is the world's largest program of the United Nations and the bigger global response to this issue in the world. And we have been able, and I have seen for my past work during 25 years working on this issue of female genital mutilation in different capacities, being able to see how many progress has been made in that particular area, an issue by African countries. I'm not even talking about other countries. I'm just focusing in our, beloved African continents. And in Africa, there is 29 countries with FGM prevalence. Out of the 29 countries, I can say that 28 countries have been able to make tremendous progress in this area, putting in place legislation, putting in place policy, working and creating coordination, multi-sectoral coordination response and units in place funded by their governments. Making sure that we know when we are talking about, the holistic approach, everybody has a space around the table to discuss, civil society organizations, parliamentarians, grassroots level, youth, women, government, sitting and really, looking at this issue, planning together, reviewing what works, what doesn't work, look at complementarity and move forward. And I just want to, because I heard a little bit the debate and with the elephant in the room, I just want to say that the policy needs to come first. The grassroots level, there is countries that are working on that area of FGM for 100 years. We had found grassroots women's groups working on and trying to eliminate this practice. So it's not that the grassroots is not there. The grassroots is there and is doing what it can do with the small resources that they have. But what makes a difference and what has made a difference for 28 countries in Africa is the policy in place and established, the law in place and established, and a process top down that is opening, the space and the platform for civil society and grassroots level and, and the bottom level that you're talking about to really blossom. Mm-hmm. I think that we need to be clear that if you want to make a progress in that area, this needs to happen. That top-down needs to happen. Mm-hmm. And the bottom-up will respond. So it's like a vessel. They're feeding each other. So we do hope that Sierra Leone really will move. There is a draft strategy for quite a long time that has not been yet approved as a policy to allow and give space to everybody to comfortably, on the very comfortable way to invest and support, the education and everything. Now, last thing, please, I just want to say one thing that I heard a lot in the discussion is a message. Message is not is important, but value deliberation is very important when we are talking about gender-based violence, including child marriage, FGM, and all. So I would like to also to see, to have some discussion somewhere and the realization that we are far away from messaging. We are talking about social norm. We are talking about, really creating a collective process of deliberation and value deliberation, collective process of change. And that is a different way of programming. Thank you so much, Isha, for giving me the space today.
No, absolutely. Everything you said was so important, and ensuring the top down and bottom up, that it is a vessel, and that you can't have one without the other when we're tackling FGM. Such an important point made. Thank you so much for that contribution. And you segued perfectly into my next section, which is about the final takeaway from our speakers, their final message to each other, to those watching. I'd like to give you each 90 seconds. You'll be fine. And I'm going to keep you to time. 90 seconds for you to give your parting thought, parting message, parting word of admonishment for Mr. Bandy, if you want to use your 90 seconds in that way, however you want to use your 90 seconds. I'm giving you 90 seconds to close out. And I am going to, Dr. Dixon, as your host, you'll go last. I'm going to start with Lady Justice Bintu Aladi. I'm going to go with the grid. Your 90 seconds, your closing thoughts, your choice to use them however you please.
So basically for me, one thing is to everyone to know that the judiciary is dynamic. We listen, we follow, and we do make reforms. Secondly, I want us not to forget the boys. We talk about the girls, but we do not. We fail to educate the boys as well, and to recognize that boys also get abused. So there's that as well. Education for me is very key. Another point I want to make is that perhaps we should think as a solution, we should also think about having a sexual offenders register, a probation register as well, those on probation and sexual offenders register. I think we need to develop things like that. But certainly for me, education for me is the main point. As from the parenting, parents have to know how to bring up their children. Yes, I know that the state has responsibility, but parents do have responsibilities as well. And of course, please know that with the courts, we're impartial. You have to gather all the evidence. We have to have the evidence to prosecute and to give judgments. For me, that's what I have to say. Am I up to 90 minutes or can I say more?
I'm going to carry the interest. Let's carry the interest, and I'll come back to you if we have time, just because we're running. So thank you for that, Lady Justice. Sharon, Lady Justice had to throw in the parenting piece once more. Your 90 seconds to provide your thoughts on solutions, the way forward. Your choice.
Thank you so much for having us. Thanks to UNFPA for the privilege. I've always said that we cannot question whether this government cares about education. They spend 21% of their GDP, and they have maintained that. We cannot question whether they cared about Ebola. They created an AOC, declared it an emergency, and created a structure and put money on it. We cannot question whether they care about Corona. They've done the same. I question whether they care about women and girls. They have not done systematically what we expect the state to do to keep its promise to the girls of this country. And there's so many systemic failures. And it's not on this president alone. It's statewide. It's the way we treat women and girls. It's how the state is constructed, what are our priorities, and the continued gambling of women's rights. The idea that, oh, this is too political, or this is too much, or this is too much. No. Women's rights, girls' rights ought to be central to our development agenda. We should spend on it. We should put the structures in place. We should come together as a society and say not in our name and never again. And I should finally ask all Sierra Leoneans who care deeply about this issue, please join us with the Survivor Solidarity Fund that's co-chaired by Aisha and Asma, and now our brother Idris Elba has joined us. Join us, contribute to this fund. You can go to the websites now. It's www.survivorsolidarity.fund.org. And I know Fatma Tassori as well is one of the champions. We thank you for the incredible support so far, and we ask you to continue to stand with the survivors of Sierra Leone.
Sharon, thank you. 1 minute, 5 seconds. Well done. Going to Agatha, your 90 seconds for your closing thoughts, your ideas for solutions, the way forward.
I want to thank everybody for joining us, and specifically to thank the organizers, and also to thank all partners that are working in this sector. We do appreciate your work, but again, let's be mindful, all what we are doing, let's be sure that it is survivor-centric. It has the best interest of the survivor, whatever we are doing. And to the aspect of the government, we are tired of what we are about to do. We want to see what is done and how they are going to maintain these structures. And another thing, we all spoke about education. Please, when we are doing this education, this sensitization, let it be content specific. Don't take something from Senegal wants to come and do it here. Let's try to domesticate and simplify our messages so it gets to the right people at the right time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Agatha. Thank you. Mr. Vandy, over to you. Your closing thoughts.
Thank you very much for having me, and apologies again for not having the Honorable Minister to participate in all of these discussions. We are not going to be reporting as to what we put in place anymore. We will now tell you that this is what we have done. The one-stop centers are here and they are going to work. And we will ensure that all of you join us. And I can thank Dr. Olabisi so much for spending 5 to 6 days training. So we are in it together. We will ensure that these centers are sustained and the legacy will live on. It's not about making promises that we'll do this, do that. And I can assure you that with Honorable Manti Tarali at the helm of affairs, I think we are going to get more and more of things that will happen in terms of girls and women empowerment in this country. So the centers, once again, are in Kwenadugu, Potloko, Moyamba, Kailaun. We also have in Kehama Road. These are the 6 centers that we have. We want the populace to make good use of it. Try them and give us your feedback. We'll always continue to improve on the services that are going to be provided at those centers.
Right.
Thank you very much for having us as a ministry, and we'll continue this conversation. Thank you, UNFPA, for creating such a wonderful platform.
Mr. Vandy, thank you. Thank you for that. Though I'd be remiss if I didn't say the hope is that they won't have to try them. Honourable Leslie Bryan, last 90 seconds to you, please. Your 90 seconds, your closing thoughts.
I'll be briefer than that. This has been a fantastic discussion, and I suppose it was partly prompted by a sense of collective outrage at a particularly horrific event that happened recently. But there's a sense that this is not an outlier, and I suppose my message from this is that there's a momentum here, and it's really, really important that we don't lose it. That we have to bring the voices of survivors front and centre. Their experience has to be heard. But I think we do also need to listen to other stakeholders, other people who are change agents in addressing this. And I include, the judiciary and people, everybody who is able to make change. I think we need to listen to them. So my only message would be that we listen to each other, that we recognise that some change is immediate, some change takes a little bit longer, but that we understand that, we support each other, and that we don't lose this momentum. Thank you.
Ambassador O'Brien, thank you. Thank you for that. Dr. Olabisi Claudius Cole, over to you for your final thoughts, please.
Thank you. Thank you, UNFPA, for organizing this. It has been very educative and has been a wonderful program. What I'd like to say is, I think what we need to do here is to have some kind of coordination between all the stakeholders. We need to establish some kind of a task force on SGBV where we can all get together and make sure that we're all on the same page so that the provision of the service is standardized and we have a national strategy so that, you know, the whole country can benefit from all the programs. To the survivors and the parents, I want to say early reporting is crucial, and this is where raising awareness is also very important, because the earlier they come, the more we're able to have enough forensic evidence for the survivors to be able to prosecute their cases. And also, we need the forensic lab to be established as soon as yesterday. So to those who are in authority where this can happen, I think it should be made sooner rather than later. And I also want to commit the Rainbow Initiative that we continue to work together in making sure that the one-stop centers are established. We're there, whatever help you need, we're ready to support you. Thank you.
Dr. Clodical, thank you so much. Asma James, over to you for your closing thoughts, please.
Yes, sorry again. Aisha, thank you very much to UNFPA. It has been an interesting conversation. I must say I learned a lot. And of course, as we've all spoken, messaging is very, very important in all of this. And education is certainly needed in all of this. So as a journalist, also as an activist, I will make sure, you know, I dedicate time to changing the messaging now because of all what we've spoken about and all, especially on the issue of FGM. That's a very tough topic in Sierra Leone. But listening to all of what Cherno, my friend, and all the others have spoken, I think I've learned a lot about that. So I'll continue, like I said, to provide platform for such issues to be discussed. And again, thank you so very much, UNFPA, for this platform. Thank you.
Asma, thank you. Thank you so much. Better, sorry, your thoughts, please, as we bring this to a close.
Okay, so I can't thank the donor partners enough for all the support to the fight against SGBV, Irish Aid, UNFPA, UN Women, and also the ministry. Because no matter what the ministry usually calls us, not all the time, but they do call us, and we would hope that they would engage us more and tap into the expertise that we have. Because I'm highlighting some of the issues that we would face with the one-stop shop center. And that means we need to create a platform for law reform. So let's look into our laws to end early child marriage, to make sure if we're training midwives can give testimony in court, to make sure we tap into the force that we have within the legal profession. We have more lawyers coming out every day. I'm not taking a job out of the paralegals, but I also want the fight against SGBV to succeed. Get lawyers in your one-stop center. They will help you better. It makes a difference. I think we cannot conclude or conquer this fight without a collaborative effort. We've been doing a lot of collaboration, but it needs to be more extensive. And as Asma said, the messaging is key. But even with the messaging, the messenger is essential. Because sometimes your message is key, but the wrong messenger just kills everything. We have to put our resources into the issues, the structures, and the things that we need to work. We are supposed to have a specialist assault syndicate, the SAS, who's supposed to be handling rape and sexual penetration. We still have the family support unit handling rape and sexual penetration. And SAS is under the family support unit. If the family support unit is getting 4 million a month, a year, I can only imagine what the SAS is getting. So if we really want to fight rape and sexual and gender-based violence, we need to resource these institutions. We need to stop the victim naming and shaming. And that is a responsibility on all of us, because sometimes even the questions we ask We ask. Sometimes even our facial expressions and reaction when stories are told gets these people to hold back and hesitate. We need a robust investigation. We're tired of armchair investigations. You go to the police and then, oh, sorry. I'm done.
No, I've given you her time, so you've got 10 more seconds.
Great. So with the police, we're tired of the armchair investigations. Get up and go to the crime scene. Don't wait for 2 weeks, 10 days, 5 days to go to the crime scene. It's almost always too late to do that. We need to support the Solidarity Fund. We also need to clamor for a forensic lab much more than before. We need all hands on deck to make the necessary change. Thank you so much for the platform, Dr. Kim.
Thank you, Fatma. You and Lady Justice, your sisters in the law, so I'm sure she didn't mind giving you her extra time. For my part, as we bring this to a close, I want to say thank you to UNFPA for asking me to play a small role in facilitating this conversation, and thank UNFPA for the work that they do and all the partners on the ground in Sierra Leone who are tackling this issue day in, day out, and to each and every one of you on this platform who are all, change agents, and even Mr. Vandy, who came on and took a few licks. You handled it well, and we appreciate you. And I honestly do want to say I appreciate you taking the seat and answering the questions, and committing the government to not just making plans but building strategies and putting those into place. For my part, it is about the message. It is about collaboration and education. But I would just urge everybody once again to remember what happened to that little girl a couple of weeks ago. We know that she sadly isn't the only victim of this kind of violence. Far too many children and women are suffering. But as somebody who is speaking to her family on a practically daily basis, it is truly devastating. And we have to stop this. We have to stop this. We cannot live in a country, we cannot be from a country that is allowing this to go on. We have to do everything we can. We need to collaborate. We need to put past differences aside. We need to remove politics from the fray. And we need to put survivors at the center. So that is what I urge. And for me, from where I sit here, I'll continue to tell the story and use my platform in the ways that I can. So thank you for me. Thank you to everybody who is watching, who has stayed on throughout this almost 2.5 hours. I thank you for joining us for this World Population Day gathering. I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Kim Ava Dixon, our host. Dr. Kim, again, thank you for asking me to be a part of this. Over to you.
Ooh, thank you. I don't even know where to start, but I must say to Aisha, you're wonderful. To all the panelists, I couldn't have asked for more. So thank you all really very much. I just want to say two things. Well, one on the response and one on prevention. One, the one-stop centers, they're here to stay. They're not going away with politics. They're here. They're integrated into the site. What we're going to do is to work to improve the quality. I hear you on the midwife story, but in the USA, they have what they call SANE, sexual assault nurse experts. So why can't we have our midwives? So Fatmata, I'm coming to you. You have to work with us to help us to get the law changed so that our midwives can give evidence as well. Dr. Claudia Scott, where are you? I had a discussion with you, and you and I, we had a plan. We said we're going to reach out to the female doctors in the meantime. So if the female doctors are listening, any doctor listening, we're coming to you. Because if we had more doctors like Dr. Claudius Cole, we could make a difference. We have the one-stop center at King Harmon. I need you on the roster. Please commit your time, because I'm coming to you so that you give me 1 hour on certain days so that I will have my doctors in the center. So the one-stop centers, we need that. Now on prevention. I hear it's key. It's really, really key. What we are doing as UNFPA is supporting the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education to revise the curriculum so that we can include life skills in the curriculum, so that even as girls grow, they begin to know about their body, what's right, what's not right. We're not stopping there. We're also working to ensure that even the girls who have dropped out, girls become pregnant, that's not the end of the story. If you're pregnant, you can still go to school, you've still got a brain. And even if you don't want to go to school, we're working to ensure that we can get them back into school whenever they feel it's right. I must say that our work with the Ministry of Gender and Children's Affairs Our work with the Ministry of Basic and Secondary School Education is happening. So I am encouraged. I hear everybody that we need to accelerate the action. And that's why I had the panel, so that the panel could bring out what the issues are. And then we're not only people of words, but we're people of action, so that we move from here. And all of you, I'm going to hold you. I'll be knocking on your doors so that we can continue to work with and support government. I want to end this there. Aisha, I know it was so early in the morning for you. I know we've had chats at nights. We've had you up early in the morning. So thank you ever so very much. You really push the boundaries. You help people to do bashing and you help people to take the bashing. I mean, it was just fantastic. Whatever you want to call it, bashing or no bashing, I wouldn't have wanted less from anybody. Cherno, I couldn't have expected less from you, because if you hadn't pushed the boundaries, if Aisha hadn't asked the critical questions, we wouldn't have gotten to where we are. Thank you all so very much. I think we just want to round it off here and to say, please, this is just the beginning of things to come. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Be safe, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend, everybody. Bye.
Well, as you can see, it was a spirited conversation. There was a lot shared, and I hope you got a lot out of it. This is a subject very close to my heart, and one that we're going to come back to over and over again here on Home with Isha Sesay. But for now, we are going on hiatus. We'll be back in September with the show. A bigger and more exciting show for you is in the works. But I will be here on social media. You will be hearing from me in the weeks ahead. So keep checking back, keep checking the space. But till then, be safe, everyone. Thank you for watching all these months. Bye for now.